Hoki mai ana, welcome back. I'm joined now by our panel, PR consultant Sarah Sparks, former New Zealand First MP Jenny Marcroft, and lawyer and National Party member Liam Hehir. Welcome to you all. I'm going to start with you, Liam, on Chloe Swarbrick there. Do you think is there any political will left outside of the Greens for a decriminalisation or a law change in the way the US has done on cannabis?
Well, we won't be doing it in the way that the US has done, and you explained why in the interview. I think you would find that there is broad support in New Zealand generally for decriminalisation. If the campaigners had gone for decriminalisation as an option, that almost certainly would have passed. But I don't think that there's the political will there, and certainly not in this Parliament. And really what it comes down to is that this is one of those issues where, despite having broad support, there's such intensity of opposition that political parties and governments in particular don't want to poke the bear on it and to have to deal with the controversy. So really, a referendum gives you the cover to be able to do it. We had a referendum. They were a bit too ambitious in terms of the referendum proposal. And I think that for the time being anyway, I would be surprised if we see any action. So
we've missed the moment for decriminalisation, you think, as well, Sarah?
Yes, but I think that Chloe's been very courageous in terms of keeping this going, because, I mean, I think in terms of Māori and how many are impacted with convictions, and it ruins lives. So, you know, we've also got to think about common sense approaches and compassionate. She's very courageous, compassionate, common sense, and I really hope that there's more support and appetite for it.
Well, Jenny, if the US, which is where we have modelled a lot of our drug laws on, the war on drugs, for example, if the US is rethinking this, should we also be rethinking it here in New Zealand?
Well, I think we've got a very clear mandate from the referendum, which said, most of New Zealand said, no, we don't want to reform to legalise marijuana. So that's that really. And from a political perspective, as mentioned already, why would the government want to go there? Grant Robertson has already indicated in terms of some changes maybe coming around sport and advertising of for example, alcohol.
Yes.
They could be making their own changes in some of that space, which is clearly one of Chloe's kaupapa, which is about reduction of harm, which, you know, she should be acknowledged for that. She's been very passionate about that over the 5 years that she's been in Parliament.
Well, another super interesting interview this morning about Malachi Subek's death, which you will have all seen Connor Whitten's story and the Minister's interview. What did you think of what you heard from the Minister this morning, Liam?
I mean, I was pretty frustrated. I mean, I guess it's the case that he had to front up, but I mean, nothing really interesting or insightful to say in it, you know, to say, right, wait for the report, wait for the report, wait for the report.
We're sick of waiting for reports, aren't we?
This is the Ombudsman said the OT failed to do the bare minimum. You don't need a report to be able to issue meaningful comment on that. And to describe yourself as still being a bulldozer when you are just playing for time in terms of waiting for the report all the time, it's really, really frustrating. I read that report last night. I had my 5-year-old son sitting on my lap as I did it. It was really, really hard, and any parent would feel the same way. And I don't think anybody who was upset, which is every civilised person being upset by what's happened, would feel much comfort about this in any way at all.
Yeah, it is a really wrenching report. They all are, and it's very frustrating, isn't it, to have to wait for this process to play out with the multiple reviews. What did you think, Jenny?
Well, you know, OT should not be let off the hook over this, absolutely not. But at the same time, I think the Minister should be congratulated for fronting up. It would have been quite easy for him to say not available until after his reviews have been conducted. So big ups to Calvin on that. When you think about the number of calls of concern coming into OT, you know, 70,000 a year, that's a phenomenal amount of pressure going on to that organisation, which indicates that the extent of the problem of children being harmed in our society. One of the things that I think the Minister could perhaps spend some more time explaining is what are those changes going on inside Oranga Tamariki. For example, I understand that there is a program of cultural development being undertaken that's rolling out right across this entire ministry of 5,000 staff. Getting the change on the ground inside that system so that you get rid of that, or people become aware of their own cultural or unconscious bias, that will change how people are operating on the ground. Getting closer to working with community, he indicated that. Pauau Te Atatu, which is a report written 30 years ago, the previous minister, my former cabinet caucus colleague, I should say, Tracy Martin, she started that project, operationalised that. That is working directly with iwi so that if there is a call of concern coming into OT, iwi become involved right away. They have the networks going out into the community to wrap around the whānau. Those changes, we need to see more of that and hear more about what is happening in there.
Sarah, the Minister has vowed to fix Oranga Tamariki. Do you think that's possible?
Well, I don't think that it falls on the shoulder of just the minister. This is not just an all of government problem. This is an all of nation problem, all of community problem. When we operate in silos, like how many people would have known what was going on with that little boy? I mean, I cried reading that case report. You know, he was in hospital 16 kgs. It's just devastating. So, you know, good to see the minister, but the system is broken, and also what has happened with the practising certificates of the caseworkers involved. There should be censuring. Like, there's a whole lot of operational things that should have been done straight off the bat, and there should have been transparency to show the public, to give us confidence, but there is no confidence, and that is the issue. But it's also around what's happening in our communities. The minister was right. He was talking about partnering and and I know that there's a devolvement into community, but I can tell you, if this was whānau order, it wouldn't happen.
Liam, I can tell you're itching in over here.
That's all that's really true, but let's just remember that the Ombudsman said the Minister's Department failed to do the bare minimum. Right, we're not talking about a marginal case, we're not talking about anything overly complicated, failed to do the bare minimum. And one thing I'm really sick of, it's a bit like, you know, when you hear thoughts and prayers, I am sick of hearing politicians respond to these cases by saying no child should ever have to go through. I mean, it's a given, all right? There's nothing, you're not adding nothing to it. It's trite. We've got the highest rate of child abuse in the OECD. Let's get past the pleasantries and saying that no child should have to go through it. It's just, we all know that.
Yeah, and the Minister did say child abuse is a complex problem, didn't he? You know, and I think we can all agree on that.
Any of us that have been, that have lived experience of family violence, we understand how silencing it is for those children in that situation. And I speak from personal experience. So a minister who's prepared to take on the worst portfolio in government, because at the end of the day, if a child dies, that is a tragedy. We all have to look in the mirror and say, how was I responsible in any part for that?
Sarah?
Well, there's been a death. So it's like death in the workplace in terms, if you look in the commercial sector, if that happens, from an OSH perspective, there are always criminal charges. So, I know our queer are calling out for criminal charges as well. So there needs to be some accountability, because that will build the trust and faith and confidence, and also the responsibility that we have in society as members, as individuals ourselves, as families, as well as those that operate within the agencies.
Yeah, I think we all can agree we need to do much, much better, don't we?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a wonderful panel. We never have enough time on these things. But thanks so much for joining us here on The Nation. Efai Akine, hijabs, high schools and hardliners, insights into the Iran protests from Kiwi-Iranian expert Dr. Negar Pato. Plus, behind the scenes with MP and mother of 8, Barbara Edmonds.